I never believed in memory lapses, until one rewrote my home. It was a Thursday. I remember that because my neighbor across the hall, Mrs. Penley, always burned incense on Thursdays, that sickly lavender stench that clings to the old wallpaper like mildew. She said it kept away the winter spirits. I always thought she was senile. Now I'm not so sure. I came home late, arms full of groceries, my coat soaked from the kind of November rain that doesn't fall so much as drip from the sky like something rotten bleeding through cloud skin. My apartment, 3B, is a modest space in a crumbling brick building off Cambridge Street. Floors creak. Pipes groan. Nothing new. Except that night, something was new. I shut the door behind me, kicked off my shoes, and froze. There was a door on the left side of the hallway. A door that had never been there. It was identical to the others, same flaking white paint, same old brass handle, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was, my apartment only has 3 doors, the front door, the bathroom, and the bedroom. That's it. I've lived there for 4 years. I know my home like I know my own hands. But there it was. Just standing there like it had always existed. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough that the paper bag I was holding started to sweat through and one of the apples rolled out and thudded against the baseboard. Still, I didn't move. My first instinct. Maybe the landlord had done something. Put in a closet. But that didn't make sense. There were no construction noises. No notice. And besides, the wall that door was in. That wall backs directly into my bedroom closet. So I did what anyone would do. I touched it. The wood was cold. Too cold. Like it had been outside. Like it didn't belong in here. And when I put my ear to it, I could swear I heard the faintest sound, like breathing, slow and deep, behind the wood. I backed away. Okay, I muttered. I'm just tired. Long day. I made dinner. Tried to ignore it. Every few minutes I'd glance down the hallway. The door never moved. Never opened. But it was always there. Always waiting. Around 1:30 a.m., I finally stood up from the couch and marched down the hall. I grabbed the knob. It was locked. Not jammed, locked. From the inside. And then I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The dust. There wasn't any. My whole apartment has this fine layer of city dust, no matter how often I clean. But the floor in front of that door. Spotless. Like something had been walking in and out recently. Often. I didn't sleep that night. I kept the lights on and sat in bed with the door to my bedroom half shut, just so I could still see down the hall. Just so I'd know if something moved. But nothing did. The next morning, it was still there. The door. Solid. Silent. Wrong. I texted my landlord, Henry, and asked if anyone had done repairs. He sent back a confused "LOL what?" and said nobody had touched my unit since July. That's when I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I went around to the bedroom. Opened the closet. Shoved everything aside. Pressed my knuckles to the back wall, the one that would align with the new door. It was solid. Drywall. No gap, no seams. I even knocked, the sound was dull, dead. No hollow echo. No space. But when I returned to the hallway and opened the door again, it was unlocked now. I found something that made me go completely still. There was a room inside. Not a closet. A room. Small. Dusty. Yellow wallpaper curling at the edges. A tiny wooden chair in the center. And the faintest impression of footsteps on the warped floorboards, as if someone had been pacing there. Recently. No windows. No outlets. And it was ice cold. The air didn't smell like the rest of the apartment. It had this stale sweetness. Like dried flowers. Or decay. I backed out slowly. Closed the door. Tried to convince myself I was dreaming. That maybe it had always been there and I just forgot. But in my bones, I knew. That room wasn't there yesterday. And it sure as hell wasn't empty. I told myself I wouldn't open it again. That was the rule I made: if I left it alone, it would leave me alone. I lasted 3 days. The first night after I found the room, I barely slept. Every sound in the apartment felt amplified. Pipes knocking, wind moaning through the cracks, normal things, but now they felt orchestrated. Like background noise for something waiting to step forward. But it wasn't just paranoia. On the second day, I noticed the layout of the apartment felt off. The hallway seemed longer than I remembered. Just a little. Enough to make me stop halfway and squint toward the end. The light fixture above buzzed faintly, as if straining to reach me. And the bathroom mirror? When I looked into it, the reflection lagged. Not by much. But enough to make my heart seize for a second. I moved my hand, it followed half a beat too slow. I stared at my own eyes, waiting for the glass to betray me. It didn't. Not yet. That evening, I got a call from my sister, Mel. She was checking in, small talk, weather, the usual. I almost told her about the door, almost. But something stopped me. Like if I said it out loud, it would hear. So instead, I asked her something simple. Do you remember my apartment layout? Yeah. Why? Do I have 3 doors? A pause. Then, what? Yeah. Front, bath, bedroom. Why? I nodded slowly, phone pressed to my ear, staring down the hallway at the 4th door that definitely existed. That had weight and dimension and smell. That breathed. But she couldn't see it. Just making sure, I said. That night, I dreamed of the room. Only, it wasn't just a dream. It felt participatory. In the dream, I was standing in the hallway, staring at the door. But this time, there was something written on it in faint charcoal letters. Do not follow yourself in. I woke up sweating, throat dry, lights still on. The bedroom door creaked open wider than I remembered. I couldn't recall if I had left it like that. I got up, water in hand, walked toward the kitchen. And stopped. The hallway was longer again. The new door looked farther away, maybe 3 more steps than usual. My heartbeat slowed. Thickened. The distance wasn't natural. It was like walking in a dream where the ground stretches just before you reach your destination. I turned back. The kitchen wasn't there. Only the hallway. Long, dim. Silent. That's when I heard the floorboards creak, behind the new door. Not once. Twice. Then slow, dragging steps, like someone was circling the chair inside. Waiting. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my coat. I don't remember unlocking the front door. I just know I ended up outside, cold rain soaking me again, the streetlights buzzing above like flies. I walked around the block. Twice. Tried to breathe. Tried to think. Was I losing it? Sleep deprived? Having some kind of neurological event? Eventually, I went back in. The door was still there. The hallway had returned to its normal size. The kitchen was where it should be. But now, something new had changed. I checked my phone. Dozens of new photos in my camera roll. All pitch black. Except one. A single image of my hallway, taken from inside the mysterious room. The angle showed the door slightly ajar, and me, standing just outside, staring in. I hadn't taken it. The following morning, I took the day off work. Told my boss I had food poisoning. I couldn't focus. Couldn't think. All I could do was sit on the couch and stare at the hallway. I tried opening the new door again around noon. It resisted. Not locked. Just, heavy. Like something on the other side was pressing against it, gently, as if not ready to let me back in. But I saw something else. Just before I pulled away. Light. There was now a small lamp inside. I hadn't placed it there. Its glow was sickly orange, like fire behind dirty glass. And on the floor beneath the chair, something new had appeared. A pair of black shoes. Pointed outward. As if someone had been sitting there. Or still was. Later that evening, I started hearing whispers. Faint. Wet. Like someone speaking with a mouth full of water. They came from the hallway. Only when the lights were off. But the worst came at 3:12 a.m. I know the time exactly because I looked at the clock right before the sound began. Knocking. From inside the room. 4 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then, a voice. Just one word, whispered, but so close to the door I could hear every brittle syllable. Come. By the next day, I stopped pretending I was in control. Something had shifted overnight. The apartment felt heavier, thicker. The walls had a pressure to them, like they were breathing inward. And every time I closed my eyes, I saw the room. That damn room. Chair, shoes, and now, something else. A second chair. Facing the first. I didn't go to work. I didn't eat. I sat on the floor of the hallway for hours, watching the door like a man watches a loaded gun pointed at his chest. Waiting for it to twitch. At some point, I stood. Reached for the handle. It turned easily. No resistance. Inside, the layout had changed. The room was deeper now. At least twice as long. And the chairs, they weren't empty. One was facing away from me. A figure sat there. Still. Perfectly still. Dressed in a pale, dust-colored suit. The other chair, my chair, was empty. My mouth was dry. My hands shook. But I stepped in. The air was wrong. Warmer now, but thick, like old breath recycled too many times. The wallpaper pulsed slightly, as if reacting to my heartbeat. I approached the second chair slowly. The figure didn't move. I leaned in. Its head was turned away, face hidden behind lank, gray hair. Skin pale and stretched. Hands resting in its lap, knuckles swollen and cracked like old paper. One finger twitched as I got closer, not a threat. A tick. A signal. This thing, this shape. It was familiar. Not in appearance. But in posture. In presence. And then I noticed the wall across from the chairs. It wasn't wallpaper. It was mirror. Cracked in the center. And in it, I saw myself sitting in the other chair. Except. I wasn't. The man in the mirror had my face. My body. But he looked wrong. Skin sallow. Eyes sunken. Mouth slightly open like he was whispering something I couldn't hear. And when I blinked, he didn't. I stumbled back out of the room, heart hammering. Slammed the door shut and leaned against it, gasping. That night, I barricaded the hallway. Moved the couch. Stacked chairs. Anything I could find. But when I woke up, the barricade was gone. Furniture back in place. Lights dimmer than before. The door still closed. Still waiting. That's when I noticed the photos on the wall. I have a few, family, a vacation from years ago, old college friends. But now, they were different. Each photo showed the same thing, the room. Sometimes from inside, sometimes from odd angles. But always empty. Always still. Except one. It was the picture of me and my sister, Mel, from a trip to the coast in 2018. Now, in the photo, I was sitting in the chair inside the room, alone. Same chair. Same angle. And in the mirror behind me, the reflection of Mel. Standing at the door. Watching. But she hadn't been there. Not in real life. And now, I didn't know if she even existed. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I scrolled through my texts, they were all blank. Not deleted. Erased. Just a timestamp and a gray bubble. No words. No photos of her in my gallery. No calls in the log. No contact under Mel. Only one contact remained. A number labeled, ME, old. I didn't call it. That night, the whispers got louder. Clearer. They were coming from the room, yes, but also from the vents. The faucet. Even the silence between the fridge's mechanical groans. Whispers that said, "He's not you. You left him there. You shouldn't have turned around. Sit. Sit. Sit." I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a hammer from under the sink. I was going to destroy the door. Tear it off the frame. End whatever this was. But when I swung, it hit plaster. The door was gone. The hallway wall was solid, unbroken. No seam. No frame. No handle. But I knew. It was still there. I pressed my ear to the wall. The breathing was louder now. And then, the whisper again. Right against the surface. "It's your turn to stay." That night, I dreamed of the room again. Only now, I wasn't watching. I was inside. Sitting in the chair. The mirror in front of me. My reflection grinned. And behind me, in the other chair, the figure stood up. I stopped leaving the apartment. What would be the point? Out there was noise, faces I no longer recognized, voices I no longer trusted. They all seemed wrong, like they knew something I didn't. Like they were waiting for me to forget. So I stayed inside. With the door that wasn't there. And the room that was. Only now, I couldn't tell where the room was. It wasn't behind the hallway wall anymore. It had started sliding, appearing behind the bathroom mirror, under the bed, in the reflections on my TV when it was off. It would drift in and out, like a fever dream. Flickering. Once, I opened my fridge, and saw the two chairs inside, dimly lit, stacked like bones in a crypt. Once, I blinked, and for a full second, I was back inside the room, sitting, facing the other me. And when I opened my eyes, I had bitten my own tongue so hard I tasted blood. The place was no longer following physics. It was following me. Then came the worst night. 3:12 a.m. Again. I woke up in bed, lights off, no memory of falling asleep. The air was buzzing, static in the silence, like pressure before a storm. And there, at the foot of my bed, the door. Just standing. No wall. No frame. Just, door. Freestanding. Closed. And then, slowly, it opened. Inside, the room was darker than usual. A thicker kind of dark. One that didn't want your eyes to adjust. But I saw them. The two chairs. The mirror. The figure. And this time, it turned. I saw its face. It was mine. But not just mine now. Older. Paler. Eyes hollow, skin thin and tight around bone like wax melted too long in heat. But the smile. That was the worst. Because it was the only part that moved. I stumbled out of bed, heart in my throat. The figure stepped closer to the door, dragging something behind it. A second body. My body. Same clothes I wore yesterday. Same chipped tooth. Same scar on my left wrist from that time I cut myself on a rusted bike handle as a kid. The figure bent down beside it and whispered something in the corpse's ear. Then it looked up. Right at me. "You've been gone a long time. We've been waiting." And the second me opened its eyes. The room began to spread after that. It infected the walls, the floor, even the light. When I turned on the lamp, the shadows didn't follow properly. They bent toward the room eagerly, like gravity had changed. The windows no longer showed the street, just a flat gray fog, pressing like fabric against glass. No sound came from outside. Not even wind. I tried to leave. Front door. Opened into the hallway. And at the end of the hallway, the room. I tried the fire escape. It only went up, endlessly. And on every landing, the same door. Same scratches around the handle. Same whispering from inside. I tried the basement. The laundry room. Even the elevator. It all led back to the same thing. The chairs. The mirror. Me. And then, one night, the room spoke to me. Not voices this time. Memories. I opened my eyes in the dark and suddenly remembered things that weren't mine. A fire in a different apartment. A woman screaming my name, but calling me Christopher, not my real name. A child's toy melting in an oven. My own hands, smaller, older, someone else's, painting a face on the wall in blood and calling it, the Watcher. I felt them not like dreams, but like recovered truths. As if I wasn't the first, me, to live here. As if I wasn't the only one. The room had belonged to many. Each one found it. Each one sat down. Each one disappeared. And now the room had made room for one more. I stopped using my name. Every time I said it aloud, it sounded wrong. Like it belonged to someone else. Like I was borrowing it. The mirror confirmed it. When I looked in, my reflection lagged. Then blinked at the wrong time. Then began to move without me. It placed a hand on the mirror from its side. Waited. And then mouthed. Switch. I don't remember when I sat down. One moment, I was in the hallway, clutching a cup of water I hadn't poured. The next, I was inside the room. The real one. The only one now. Both chairs were occupied. Across from me, the other me, older, quieter, watched with that same calm, dissecting gaze. He didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Just studied me like a specimen. Like I was late. Like I'd failed. The mirror behind him showed nothing. Just a dim, stretched shadow where we should be. Like the room had stopped reflecting reality, and was now recording something else. Something beneath it. I tried to speak. No sound came out. My throat worked, lips moved, but the air in this room swallowed words. They dissolved into the walls, into the damp wallpaper, into the ancient wood-like secrets the house refused to let go. Then the other me leaned forward. His voice was the only one that carried in here. It's not that you forgot. It's that you remembered, too late. I wanted to ask what, but I already knew. This wasn't the first time I'd found the room. Not the first time I'd seen the door. And not the first time I'd walked away from myself. I'd been here before. Lived here before. Sat in this chair. But I'd run. Abandoned it. Pushed the truth so deep it took years, lifetimes, to crawl back to the surface. And now the space had grown strong enough to pull me back. Each cycle, a little more of me had been stripped away. Names. Faces. Details. Until all that was left was the shape of a man. A placeholder. A shell. The figure across from me began to fade. First his skin. Then his eyes. Then the chair itself. He wasn't leaving. He was becoming me. And as he dissolved into haze, the mirror finally returned its image. I was alone. Just me. One chair. One man. One truth. I don't know how long I've been here now. Time doesn't work the way it used to. The light never changes. The air never warms. The room is always watching. And sometimes, not always, but often, I hear sounds through the walls. Footsteps. Laughter. A voice muttering in another language. A baby crying behind plaster. They come and go. Echoes, maybe. Or, others. On the cusp of finding their own door. Their own room. I wonder if I'll be the one waiting across from them when they arrive. My apartment doesn't exist anymore. Not in the way it used to. Not outside this place. No front door. No phone. No reflection. Just this room. This moment. And a memory I can no longer place, of a man who once feared a door, and a voice who told him not to follow himself in. I think he listened. I didn't. And now I sit here, quietly, watching the next crack appear in the far wall. Another seam forming. Another door. Maybe it'll open for you next. If it does. Whatever you do. Don't sit down.